When you get into your car and drive down the highway, speed is simple. You measure it in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. That makes sense. You are measuring how far you travel across land in a certain amount of time. But the moment you step onto a boat or board an airplane, those rules change. Suddenly, no one talks about miles or kilometers. Instead, the captain talks in knots. But what is a knot really? Is it just a fancy word for a mile? Does it measure rope? And why, in an age of GPS and satellites, do we still use a speed unit from hundreds of years ago to fly modern jets? The answer involves a piece of wood, a sand timer, and the shape of the Earth itself. Welcome to Simple Things Surprising Histories. Today, we are untangling the story of the knot. To understand knots, we have to go back to the 17th century. Back then, ships had no GPS, no radar, and no digital speed meters. But knowing your speed was a matter of life and death. If you did not know how fast you were moving, you could not know how far you had traveled. That meant you could hit a reef or get lost in the open ocean. So sailors invented something simple and clever called the chip log. Here's how it worked. They took a piece of wood shaped like a slice of pie and weighted it with lead so it would stand upright in the water. This piece of wood was tied to a long rope. But this was not an ordinary rope. The sailors tied real knots into the rope at very exact distances, exactly 47 feet and 3 inches apart. When the captain wanted to measure speed, a sailor threw the wood over the back of the ship. The wood stayed still in the water while the ship moved forward, pulling the rope out. At the same time, another sailor flipped a sand timer, usually set for 28 seconds. As the rope slid through his hands, the sailor counted the knots as they passed. 1, 2, 3. When the sand ran out, he shouted stop. If 5 knots passed through his hands, the ship was moving at 5 knots. That is where the word knot comes from. Sailors were literally counting knots tied into a rope. But here's the big question. Why were the knots spaced exactly 47 feet apart? Why not 10 feet? Why not 100? This is where speed meets the science of the Earth. On land, we use statute miles. 1 statute mile is 5,280 feet. This measurement comes from ancient Rome and was based on how far soldiers walked. It is a walking measurement, but sailors do not walk on water. Sailors navigate using the Earth itself with latitude and longitude. The Earth is round. A full circle has 360 degrees. Each degree is divided into 60 smaller parts called minutes. Sailors decided that 1 nautical mile should equal 1 minute of latitude. This was a smart idea. It meant maps and measurements matched perfectly. If a captain needed to travel 1 degree north, he knew that was 60 nautical miles. No math needed. Now back to the rope. Sailors calculated that if knots were tied 47 feet apart and counted over 28 seconds, the number of knots would match the number of nautical miles per hour. That is why a knot is not random. It is directly connected to the size and shape of the Earth. So knots make sense for ships. But what about airplanes? Why do pilots still use knots today? When aviation began in the early 1900s, there were no special maps for planes. Early long-distance flights crossed oceans, and the only reliable maps available were sea charts. Early pilots navigated the same way sailors did, using stars, the horizon, and latitude and longitude. Since they used sea charts, they also used sea measurements. Using knots made everything simpler. Planes also travel long distances over the curved surface of the Earth. Statute miles work well on flat land, but they make calculations harder over long curves. Knots work perfectly with Earth coordinates. That is why pilots still use them today. So the next time you hear a pilot say you are flying at 500 knots, Remember this. That number comes from sailors throwing wood into the ocean centuries ago. It comes from knots tied into rope, and it is a unit perfectly matched to the shape of our planet. Cars measure speed based on walking. Ships and planes measure speed based on the Earth itself. I hope you enjoyed this journey into maritime history. If you did, please like the video. It really helps the channel. And do not forget to subscribe to Simple Things, Surprising Histories for more stories behind the everyday world. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.